So you want to know how to set goals that you're actually going to achieve in 2020. Well, today we're going to take a deep dive into the psychology behind goal setting, because that is step one in the process. And we're really going to give you a breakdown. We've got an awesome series coming up over the next couple of weeks, and we're going to give you a breakdown of how we're going to go about this, because we've had some great questions and comments that have come through. And it seems that goal setting is more popular than I first thought. All that and more coming up right after this. So guys, in case we haven't met, my name is Yani Baumeister, and to my left here is Dr. Phil. His real name is Phil White, and he is of course our resident physiotherapist and go-to guy for everything that we don't know. Between the two of us, or between the three of us really, Rad, Phil and myself, there is nothing that we don't know. But yeah, look, I've been away for about a month, and I've been traveling and touring Europe and have had a fantastic time. I've come back and done what most people do when they come back from holiday, just got really sick and unmotivated. No, that's not true. I'm very motivated, but I am unfortunately quite sick, which is why we haven't done a couple of shows this week. It's taken
I've been in Byron.
And Phil's been in Byron, yeah, that's right. So I've just got my voice back. I can see again. My nose doesn't feel like it's just going to pour out mucus and all things that you don't want to see on live
He's back
camera.
from holidays, 7 kilos heavier, so he's officially heavier than Rad again. For those playing along at home of which brother is heavier.
That's right. That's right.
Yani currently in the lead.
I'm in the lead massively, yeah, massively. But it's not the good kilos, unfortunately. Now, the topic that I've been asked to talk about, it seems that Phil and Rad dipped their toe in the goal setting pool. It is that time of year. It's New Year's resolution time. Around the world, people are flocking to try to create new healthy habits. Exercise is a good one. And unfortunately, the vast majority of you are destined to fail. That's just statistics speaking. And so what we do here at Unity Gym is quite unique, and we go pretty deep into this. Now, the boys, I'm told, I didn't catch the show, sort of dipped their toe in the goal-setting pool or pond.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really enjoyable show. We sort of kind of outlined the basics of SMART goals and the idea of having, a BHAG, which is a big, hairy, audacious goal, and then how to do the beginnings of, goal setting. But when we were doing it, I was kind of thinking, I just think this should be one for Yani. I mean, Rad is exceptional at kind of putting together long-term fitness-related goals and following through. He is more diligent in that with anyone I've seen. But with Yani, he's just I think if Yani wasn't a personal trainer and a business owner, then it'd be a goal-setting coach, because it's just once you get him started, that's actually why we're a bit late starting this show today, because we were just chatting about what we were going to talk about, and then it ended up being a really good morning for me of goal setting and ideas. But once you get him started, you kind of can't stop. So, and that's coming from a lot of I guess that's been a real passion project for you over the years.
That's exactly right. And I'll give you just very, very quickly a summarised version as I possibly can about why this is such a passion project for me, is because over my entire life I've battled with depression. I've had my own psychological issues going on, and that's largely why I started exercising so much. It was one of the many tools that I used to manage and overcome my depression, my battle with depression. And I can confidently, with a lot of confidence, say that it is well and truly behind me, the issues. I still have good and bad days, but now I have the tools, and I've honed those tools and skills to manage it on a day-to-day basis, and it doesn't affect me very much at all anymore. And now I'm very passionate about sort of sharing that 20-year journey of how I got to this point with other people. And it's and I've been allowed to a little bit incorporate that into what we do here at Unity Gym. My brother keeps a tight rein on me, because he doesn't think that it's what people come here for. They come here to exercise. But we looked at some of the comments after the show that Phil and Rad did on a sort of superficial goal setting level, and they really were people were asking us if we could go much deeper, and that got us both very excited.
Yeah, and I think it's just so important, because you can really go into the weeds about finding really specialized programs and doing really fancy exercises, and you can spend so much time and plenty of money, and you're emotional bandwidth trying to like do all this fancy stuff to get somewhere. But if you don't have a clear idea about where you're going and what you actually want and what's meaningful for you both short term and long term, then you can spend a whole lot of time and effort really not achieving what you could be achieving if you had a bit of intention around what you're doing. So I think it's so important now, and I think it's going to be the most valuable thing we do for the whole year right now, is just giving you the tools to really be quite direct about what you want to get in your life, whether that's fitness goals or, a lot of this applies to just life stuff, business stuff, relationships. But yeah, giving you these tools to work through any kind of goal you want and then how to get there. So I think this is the stuff here. And I'm also kind of keen because, as someone who's just started my own business, I've been talking to Yani about this quite a lot, but yeah, working through this as we go through the show is going to be really helpful for me to figure out, exactly how I'm going to get to where I want to be. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's fun because you get to reflect on, how much you've achieved and accomplished and that sort of thing. So for me, it's fun. Richie, can you do me a favour and throw me a pen, because I've got stuff coming up and I just want to make notes as we go along so that I don't forget things. Today, what we thought we'd do is just give a sort of a bit of what do we call it? A
big picture view.
A big picture view, and talk about what we're going to cover in this series, because we've decided we're going to do this topic this week, finish this week off, introduce some of these concepts, and then next week we're going to go deep into each concept. And I've spent the morning working my butt off to summarize all of what we're going to talk about. Comes from a book that I'm writing, and yes, I'm writing a book. It's been 4 years in the making. 5 years. Richie's laughing up there because it's been a long time in the making. Yeah, that's right. And the book is split into 3 sections: mindset, movement, and nutrition. And this is all coming from the mindset, and I call it motivation and productivity hacking. And so, yeah, it's exciting. I like talking about this stuff. It's something that I'm very passionate about.
Understatement of the century.
Yeah, that's right. And it's something that has served me really well. A couple of the comments have come through about what Rad and I have achieved with our business and with our personal lives, and how much we get done. Richard, Phil, myself, and Rad here on a day-to-day basis. And a lot of it is attributed to the systems we've got in place.
That's part of why I ended up deciding to work here, because I was like, damn, there's just a non-stop stream of stuff that these guys get done, and you can see it. It's posted all over the internet. That doesn't happen without some
serious systems in place. That's exactly right. And I talk to people, and they're always fascinated with how we get so much done. And the reality is it's not nothing I've made up. I've worked with lots of mentors along the way, and I've read a lot of books, and yeah, we just sort of put it together into a nice system. So. To give you a bit of a wireframe of what we're going to talk about over the next week, we've broken it into 3. There's really 3 areas that you need to focus on when you're setting goals. And I had a big talk to Phil today, and I said, if you're going to let me go deep on this, then there's no way that we can.
I'm the reins here.
That's right. Yeah. He's literally the one that's keeping me on not to go too deep, because trust me, we can go deep. And how deep is up to you guys based on today's show. So the first thing that we have to deal with is the psychology around why certain people achieve their goals and why certain people don't achieve their goals. And it's a big, big book of worms that you can open up and dive into. And this is the area that I'm super passionate about.
Just going to pause to appreciate Book of Worms. That's a new one.
What is it meant to be? Just tell him that he can't clean this window today. Yeah. Sorry, we got Daniel, our window cleaner, out there who cleans all our glass in the gym, and we have a thick soundproof window in the studio here that allows us to see out, and he usually comes and does both sides, and he won't be able to come in today.
Can of worms is what you're looking for.
Can of worms, book of worms, can of worms. He just got it. Oh, we're professional today. But this is what today's going to be like. So if you don't like it, maybe tune into something more serious, because we're really just going to frame up the week today, and we're going to introduce these concepts. And for those of you who are interested in goal setting and are interested in productivity and lifestyle and motivation hacking, this is going to be a freaking powerful series for you. I'm going to just share everything I've learned over 20 years, really summarized into a series of videos.
And so for those watching right now, it'd be good to either, we had some really, we had about, 20 plus comments here on last week's video about things that you do want to achieve in the short and the long term. So that was really wonderful. And if you're just watching this one, you haven't watched last week, maybe do the same here. But I'd also be interested to hear what big goals you've set in the past and you've actually achieved, and maybe a bit of an insight into how you've got there, because I think it's a really common thing to goal set, but often it's not such a common thing to reflect on what you've actually, if it's worked.
This is really important, because this is where we're going to get started today. This is what I'm going to be talking about in the first show, which is the concept of reflection, and which has to be the starting point to any goal setting process. Because when you set some goals, and this is I'm digressing a tiny bit off where I wanted to go here, but I feel this is important. It's a great time to jump in and say it. When you set goals, I call the goals the vision, and it's maybe, so to speak. And then the most important part of the goals is the plan, which we're going to go into quite deep, which is reverse engineering those goals and making them making a tangible plan that you can progress forward on. And don't worry, I'm skipping over this very quickly now. We're going to go deep into this. But the problem is that becomes a roadmap for you to get you from where you are now to where you want to go. But like any roadmap, if you don't know your starting point, then there's no way you can plot a destination path. And so the reflection process is essentially establishing your starting point. And that's why I really like that concept of, people set New Year's resolutions every year. I much prefer doing a massive reflection brain dump and actually reviewing your previous year, and then from there think about setting some goals, rather than sitting down and thinking about all these New Year's resolutions that you want, because New Year's resolutions, we all know they fail, they're useless. It's really nice to come up with things that you want to change in your life. That's a great concept, and I'm massively in favour of that. But if you haven't reflected on what your wins and losses from the year previous, then you don't have a starting point. You're not actually setting a point. And when you create a roadmap, it's going to be useless, because you don't really know. You're trying to get yourself from present, but you haven't really identified what that present is and why. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we got a few people. We got a fair few people watching live. Hello to everyone. Karina McCormack, 2020 vision, quite appropriate. Quack, hello. Yep, there is so much info out there. If you to summarise what works best and what you can do, awesome, fantastic. Andy Lawson, hello. We've got a couple of other people live on here. Abdu, hello. He's still talking about scapular winging. We will.
Yeah, it's a curious one. There are some videos if you go back on it, and again, if you haven't seen a professional yet, then yeah, it's been weeks and weeks of asking this question on the internet, and maybe it'd be time to go and see someone.
But I can give you an exercise to heal your pain at the moment, mate. Scapular push-ups on the floor are a great exercise to start with.
Long thoracic nerve injury, and then
it's going to be useless. Yeah,
so,
that's right.
Maybe your goal can be go see a professional and then get.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, the three key components we're going to talk about when we're breaking this process down is the psychology, which I've just tipped on a tiny little bit. We're going to talk about planning, the planning process, and that's where the tyre meets the road, so to speak. Well, actually, no, it's not. It's kind of where we start to build the car. And then the execution, which is where the rubber meets the road. And those three components are all each and as of important as each other, but one must come before the other. You can't do it in the reverse engineered order. It just doesn't work. So what I think probably initiated us to go broader and more macro and to talk about the bigger picture, which I love talking about, is a couple of comments that came through about, people battling with the process of, some days they're motivated to work on their goals and some days they're just not, and why that happens, and if anyone else can relate. I can't remember the girl.
Yeah, so it was Becca Perry on the UMS group.
Movement Mastermind, or the
Mastermind.
Tribe, yep.
Not sure. So many Facebook groups. But if you're not part of them, get involved. But yeah, really good. She posted a comment about saying I've got outcome goals that I want, but I think to summarize it is the process, the day to day. some days it feels good, some days it's just a total grind. So I guess she's asking if just for one, if anyone can relate. And I think that's quite a good sort of, we're going to talk about a bit later about commitment buddies, but I think it's really great she's using the group to, talk to other people about the things that help and the things that are hard about this whole process of, achieving your goals. So we'll get to the commitment buddy side of things, but yeah, that's that idea of, it's all well and good to come up with a lofty outcome goal, but if you haven't kind of put in a process of how to get there, then the process can be pretty hard. Yeah,
absolutely. And then on top of all of breaking down these three things, what Phil and I have discussed and decided to do, which I think is a really cool idea. He's full of good ideas, this guy. It was his idea to do the beginner calisthenics series that him and Rad did while I was away, and that was a real hit. People really enjoyed it. So what we thought we'd do...
My secret to it is just get Rad to do what he loves talking about, which is how to coach calisthenics, and then you get Yani on and you get him to talk about goal setting. So
That's
I don't know
right.
why these guys haven't thought of it
That's
before.
right, yeah. So what we're going to do to make it a little bit more interesting is we're going to, when I talk about a concept, we're going to then throw it over to how it relates to Phil starting his business, because he's basically starting his own clinic for the first time here. He's worked in other people's clinics for a long time. I don't know, like 8-10 years.
7.
Yep. 7 years. And so stepping out and starting his own physio and massage clinic within Unity Gym is a big step. And it's essentially going from, you act like you're a business owner when you're working for someone else because you've got to try and attract your own clients, but you're working under the umbrella of their business. They pay the electricity bills, they do all that sort of stuff. Now Phil's out doing it on his own, and he's got some huge, great, big, hairy, audacious goals that very much align with Unity Gym's big, hairy, audacious goals. And so he thought, why don't we throw it back and forth between the concepts around what we're discussing and how that kind of relates to someone in a practical sense, and we'll use him a little bit.
So we'll get some of the, business life goal stuff, but also I'll keen to bring in how it applies to real life physio kind of situations as well, because this is really one of the biggest barriers to people having good outcomes with their physio as well. One of the really, the common thing, people go in and they get given like a bunch of exercises that maybe you may or may not understand why you're doing them, and then you go away and you feel guilty about not doing the exercise, and then you actually physio and they ask, have you done your exercises? And you haven't. So it's this kind of, there hasn't been a matchup of goals and intentions about where you're trying to get to, and if that doesn't happen, then you're not going to get anywhere. So I think it's such an important thing as the physio to really properly understand, the patient journey. And myself, having been a person playing a lot of competitive sport over the years, I've had this exact issue where I've maybe had kind of outcome goals around playing certain tournaments, but that hasn't necessarily put me in the best stead for actual performance, because I've been focused on the wrong sort of thing and I haven't been able to stay injury free. So I guess I'm keen to, because again, Yani can just keep talking about this stuff, so I'm going to try and bring it back and give you some practical examples both in business and in physio land.
Physical training. And the physio land is not just specific to someone who's got an issue or compromised body.
I see physio as training for performance as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. So when we say physio, we mean training essentially, which is very practical for you guys. So the first topic, so we're upgrading our system here. We've got more cameras now, so it's pretty epic. And I've got a whiteboard set up over here in case I need to get up and draw some stuff for you guys. This is going to be big, man. The first topic of psychology, and this is a really big one and a hard one for some people to grasp, and I am going to be patient because I do know that there are going to be those of you out there that when they hear these concepts for the first time, they're going to start thinking, oh geez, that's hairy-fairy, it's a little bit too out there.
Airy-fairy rather than hairy-fairy.
Airy-fairy, whatever. I just make stuff up. I just make stuff up, yeah. Book of Worms, that's awesome. Remember, I'm sick. And just quickly, on that note, how good is Richard's Hawaiian glow? I'm actually as white and pasty as you've ever seen me before, but you wouldn't know that because on camera I look really nice and glowing, like I've come back from the Bahamas. Phil calls it the Bahamas glow.
Richie working the camera angles and the saturation dial as well.
That's exactly right. Yeah, he's got the colour.
On topic.
Sorry, yeah. So. The very first thing, as I said, that you need to do when you want to start looking at goal setting and efficiency and productivity hacking and that whole umbrella is this reflection process. And on a micro level, you'd reflect on last year if you're going to set goals or New Year's resolutions for this year. On a macro level though, if you want to change something big in your life, and so I'll give you some examples of the type of things that you'd be changing. If you've been someone who's been always overweight your entire life and you want to become lean and athletic for the first time ever, that's a really good example. If you've been someone who's had a long-term injury, and we talk about this a bit, Phil has introduced this concept to me that I absolutely love, which is the concept of injury identity. If you've had an injury that's just been with you for life and you've never really seemed to shake it, no matter what therapist you go to. So you want to become from a compromised person to an uncompromised body. That's another great example.
And just on that, with the, I guess, compromised body, often it's people who've gone through the healing process and they're actually, their body's fine.
Yeah.
But because of the depth to which they feel like this injury is affecting them, they'll, really kind of take that on board and they'll change their, what activities they do. They change the way they train, the way they move, everything around that injury, and that detraining effect plus the, I guess we've talked a lot about me doing a pain science episode, and we've got to do it in the future for sure. But it kind of is fairly wrapped up in this. If you really have a high perceived threat from your own sort of feelings around this injury that changed your kind of identity in some meaningful way, then that injury becomes its own identity and can really cause some issues. So it's not necessarily that you have a compromised body anymore, it's just you have a compromised mind about your body.
Yeah, absolutely. Continuing on, those are two good examples. Another really good example would be someone who's been broke all their life and they want to change their financial blueprint. They want to change in the future they want to become wealthy. So going from, someone who struggles financially to someone who's very wealthy. That's another great example of a big change. And so using those three examples, or maybe you're stuck in a career that you just dislike and you hate going to work, it's a grind for you and you want to start your own business like Phil. You don't want to work for other people anymore. These are big changes that you're going to not only have to start doing one thing, joining a gym isn't going to turn you from being overweight to skinny or lean and athletic. Going to a physical therapist or physiotherapist isn't going to change necessarily you just like that from being that compromised person with an injury identity to relinquishing that and getting rid of it, Going to a financial planner or a new banker is not necessarily going to change your financial outcome and future, One thing's not going to change those, but what will change those, it's going to require a complete reprogramming of your thoughts and your psychology. And that's where we have to start. And that's where this reflection process on a macro level comes into play. Because what people don't understand is that you actually can change the way you think. And those thoughts on a day-to-day basis have a profound impact on your behaviors. You all would have heard the saying, I think it's what's the philosopher or the, oh God, who was the guy that came up with the bloody Confucius? We've got a quote on our front door that says a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and it's a very famous Confucius quote, and I was trying to remember him anyway. He has been famously quoted saying, your thoughts become your actions, your behaviors become your actions become your results, or something along those lines. It's very, very true. But what we don't often talk about is the fact that your thoughts can be reprogrammed, and your thoughts are very much your current program. And I think the easiest way to create the analogy is that the brain is very much working like a computer. I don't know if you guys know this, but the Google algorithm, every computer to date has been modeled off the human brain. Our way of accessing data and our search engine inside that's inbuilt, that's what they're trying to model for AI and for computers, okay? So the easiest way to think about this is that your brain is essentially one of the most powerful or the most powerful quantum computer on the planet. And it therefore can be reprogrammed just like any computer can. You can upgrade the software, so to speak. And I often say, it's very funny, this fascinates me that people just don't understand or grasp this concept. We understand the fact that we have to continually upgrade the software on our smartphones and our laptops and our tablets, but we can't grasp the concept that we can upgrade the software on our most important computer, which is our brain, And So for those big changes that often people are trying to set goals for in their New Year's resolution, the reason why they're failing is because they're failing to upgrade that software. They're failing to align their thoughts to these New Year's resolutions and goals.
Right. So you're trying to, basically it's like you're trying to run the, most current version of, I don't know, Adobe video, editing software on Windows 95.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So you've got these goals where you're really trying to do something quite advanced, but you're working with
very outdated software.
Thoughts and belief you had when you were.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And I'll give you an example of something I said to Phil recently when we were having a little bit of a planning session with his business. I said, when he first came in, he was looking very micro, business name, what his logo was going to look like, this and that. And I said to him, you're now a business owner. You're not just a physiotherapist. You need to start looking much more macro at, where you want to be in 10 years. Like, what kind of business? Do you want an online business? Do you want a brick and mortar business? Do you want to be confined to only being able to help people that walk in your door, or are you thinking big? Do you want to help millions of people?
Spoilers, I'm thinking big.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it got him going, wow, okay, holy shit. And I said, you need to change the way you think. You're not a physiotherapist anymore. Don't think like a physiotherapist. You're a business owner now, and you've got the potential to build something that can potentially help millions and millions of people, as opposed to helping hundreds of people who book an appointment and come and see you and lay on your table. And that completely revolutionized the way he approached work and his business. And now he's completely overwhelmed with how many things he wants to achieve in his life. But now it's a matter of getting that down and
Just
actually...
a disclaimer, if you are seeing me for physio in the appointment, it's very unlikely that you will lie on the table because you'll be doing exercise. But anyway.
There you go, yeah. So that's the first step. The first step is actually understanding
So with the thoughts, I guess you've kind of got what I put up on the thumbnail is the thoughts, ego, and emotions. So this thoughts part of it is that first part.
Yep, that's right. Well, let's
how
much time have we done? Okay, good.
Yeah, I've got a client at 12, so we got to get moving.
When did we start? At 11?
10 past.
Jesus, yeah. Right. So we're cranking, yeah.
Yeah. So thoughts. You were talking about your story, and I think that's one thing. That one is one word that you were talking about before we started the show, but you haven't used in the show yet, and that's your story. So it's the story you tell yourself about yourself, and the story you think that other people see in you. And I think that's a really key concept to come up to think about, because it just really encapsulates a lot of what you've just talked about there. So
yeah, absolutely. The story goes really big, really macro. The story is what's happened in the past that's led to you being you today, which is the influences. It can be your schooling. It's influenced by so many different things. Your environment, your religion, your religious beliefs, your parents, and their beliefs and dogmas. Yeah.
So one example of that is my mum. She's 66 now, and she did some yoga in her 20s, but apart from that, never did any exercise. And she always just kind of, had that story about herself that she was just someone who doesn't really enjoy exercise. She always liked bushwalking, but never really, wasn't someone who did sports and, or enjoyed exercise. And then it started with her training here and getting a bit of experience in actual coaching, where you build that self-efficacy, that you're learning how to do things, you get some good guidance, and then she realized maybe it was just that story I told myself about exercise that was what she didn't like, but this kind of different style helped. And then from there she moved into doing ocean swimming, and we did a 2.8 kilometer swim last year together, both of us not being swimmers, and now she's in a bush walking club, and she just went on a 6-day hike in Tasmania and does weekly, twice a week training where you're doing intervals and stairs and all sorts of stuff. So she's changed that story about herself and exercise, and it's that's at the age of 66. So it's never too late to change your story about yourself, and she's happier than I've ever seen her, and it's really nice
absolutely. Absolutely. And it all starts with identifying that there is in fact a story there that is playing out, that is contributing and basically dictating what you think about every day and how you approach every situation. And there's a few examples of what can be changed. You can go from a very pessimistic person to a very optimistic person, which is critical if you're trying to make big changes in your life, because there are going to be failures along the way, and you need to learn to identify the good in those failures and the lessons that are sort of neatly tucked in there and disguised. You need to be able to, see things from a more positive light and take a more powerful stance in life.
Yeah, and it's easy to see things more positively, but obviously, you can't fix depression overnight by just saying think positively, and that's by no means what Yani is talking about here, but rather, understanding that you can change that sort of viewpoint.
Yeah, all I want you to do right now at this stage as a first step is identify that this is all playing out. Irrespective of whether you like what I'm saying or not, this is reality. This is not my opinion. This has come from hundreds of years of psychological research. I call it our programming. Our program comes from our past, and it's not. We don't have freedom of thought like we think we do. Everything that you think is made up from stuff that's happened, that you've had influence by. So the very first step to making change in life and setting goals is to identify that your thoughts leading to behaviours may be sabotaging the goals that you're going to set. And if that's the case, if you've had trouble achieving the goals that you set for yourself in the past, then that's step one for you. You need to reprogram your brain.
First is identify your story.
Yeah, so that's exactly
really
right.
Think honestly about what you're doing. Now, in the interest of time, I think we should move on to the next one. Before you do, smash that like button if you haven't already. And maybe just have a quick look at some of the comments here as well, because we got a few here. So Bioseed.
You should, Karina said you should do a goal, vision, life planning workshop. I've tried for so many years, and we actually had a really successful one. There was about 50 or 60 people that turned up. We did it, I think, in 2015 or 16. It was called our Vision Intensive Workshop, and I wanted to do it every year around this time, but Rad just wasn't very keen on it. I don't know, we could revisit it, but yeah.
Do an online one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hollywood production, mate, awesome. Richie with the camera angles. Bioxide, welcome. I haven't seen you on the stream before.
He's a gym member.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
7
It's
plus.
moved up some of my goals this year, which I had to chat to Phil about last Thursday when he helped me out. That's awesome. One of my goals last year when I joined the gym was to do a single pull-up. I thought it would take me closer to 6 months based on my strength at the time. Managed to hit it in 3 months. That's freaking awesome, man.
Yeah, so
and
good.
that's good reflection too.
Yeah.
So
next one is ego.
Ego, and this is something that I want to actually do a whole show on each of these. So ego is something that has to be dealt with because we all have egos, some huge, like me and Rad, some more contained, like Phil and Richie. And ego can be your best asset and it can be your worst enemy. And, there are many great books like Ego is the Enemy out there that is really worth reading.
I have a real sneaky ego where I feel like I try and come across as easygoing, and then you put me, I start playing sports and I go a bit like...
Yeah. And that's what he just did then, which is a form of justification, is a form of ego. So I'm going to go through the 7 ego traits in probably tomorrow's show, and we're going to talk about strategies and ways of managing that and what can happen if you don't identify them and work on that in yourself. And then we're also going to talk about emotions, and this is a big one. This is a big one that I've gone into very heavily with my emotional management. Emotions, we often, we call it cognitive effusion. We fuse to our emotions and we think that our emotions are part of our character, but they're not. And our emotions are the biggest, between our ego and our emotions, they're the biggest two things that are going to self-sabotage and cause you to sort of divert off your goal path and stuff it all up. So those are two things that you need tools and systems and processes in place, particularly for the type of person who is highly emotionally strung, or I find very creative people really need to work on these and hone these strategies and skills, more so than people who are probably a little bit less creative and more practical, more, what do you call it? What's the opposite to creative? People that are like intellects, maybe. Intellects, I don't know, yeah. So that's the psychology block, and we're
intellectual creators out there.
We're going to try and cover those 3 thoughts, ego, emotions tomorrow and Friday. And then next week, we're going to go into planning and execution. And planning is Purpose, values, and vision. All of those three components are critical. And then execution is programming, execution, and accountability. So essentially, once we've identified these thoughts and psychology component, then we're going to give you some strategies on how to reprogram if you do identify that there are some issues there that are making it hard for you to achieve your goals.
Yeah, so for those who put down their goals last week in that in the comment section of the last video, you've like a lot of people put their kind of BHAGs and then their sort of movement goals. And so for the planning next week, we'll be talking about how you work backwards from your goals, and it might even, the planning might even make you reconsider some of your goals, and it might make
absolutely.
you, which again can save you so much time and effort if you figure, if going through this, you look at your purpose and your values, and you find out that there's actually something kind of, maybe different and maybe bigger than what you originally thought.
Yeah.
And then go from there. So
yeah, absolutely. And I'll give you a little a teaser, a sneak peek into the future. If your goals, which are down here, or I'll go even deeper and say the daily behaviours, the habits, the schedule, what does your diary look like, your planner, day to day? If that doesn't align with the goals, which don't align with your values, your vision, and your purpose, if anything in that is out of alignment, there's a very high probability that you will not achieve your goals and you'll self-sabotage and end up back here at the end of this or at the start of next year wondering why you didn't achieve the things that you wanted to achieve. So, there is a really, really good strategy and process, and it's no fluke that we've achieved what we've achieved. It's because we follow this process very, very carefully, and it's very powerful, and I'm super excited to be rolling this out over the next 5, 6, 7 shows. So that's pretty much it for today, guys. It's a bit of a summary. It would be really, really good to get some comments and feedback if you're watching this live or if you watch it in the replay, that you're interested in this, because the more interest we get, the deeper we're going to go. And if we don't get a lot of interest, then we'll just sort of go on a superficial level. We'll give it to the people that have sort of asked for some basics.
And then we'll just go back doing bicep curls on camera.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And ab crunches. Now, there is a document that I've linked in the description. It's called Our Fitness Strategy Template, and this is a basic tool that we use with our members here to help them in this process. It's all about reverse engineering the goal. It's going to mean very little to you based on what we've spoken about today, but we're going to use that tool later on down the track. So we're going to give it to you for free. We've set up a landing page, so if you click on that link, it'll take you through. Put your email in, it's going to send you that document, and then you'll be able to work through this with us next week when we're going through it. I'm going to link it in every show, and we'll just tell you that you can go and grab it if you want to, and if you want to go through this process so we can help you at a higher level.
And if you know some people, like if you've been having chats around the office or at your gym about people who are, currently figuring out what they're doing and been talking New Year's resolutions, and, point them our way. Like, we really like to help as many people as you can, and we get so many comments saying, can't believe it's not more popular.
Yeah.
Well, it's up to you guys to help us.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and I am very passionate about this topic, so it's going to be exciting. I'm really, really keen to get going into it, sink our teeth into it.
Good to see you so into this stuff, Karina. Love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stay tuned.
All right, guys, that's pretty much it for today. We're going to dive into it, getting started tomorrow. We're going to go deep into psychology, and I hope you guys join us for it. Until then,
ciao.
See you tomorrow.
Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, it's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that
It's
far.
the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.